Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sami Satouri. I'm the president of Quest Insurance. Quest has been providing risk management and risk transfer solutions to business owners in the DC area and in 27 other states for almost 30 years now. We're celebrating the 30th anniversary coming up in September, and we're delighted to share with you some information that we have managed to learn in the course of the COVID period and a little bit after that. So this particular presentation was made and presented to the DC Coalition of Disability Service Providers, but it applies to lots of healthcare providers and other businesses as well. So we thought sharing some of the knowledge with you. This presentation would primarily deal with the intersection or the myth that lots of employers have between worker compensation claim filing and OSHA. But what do I mean by that? I mean by the fact that misconception that lots of business owners or HR department seem to think that the mere fact of filing a claim with their insurance company, somehow OSHA would be made aware or their local jurisdiction, wherever they're located at, would be informed of that claim, which is completely not true. So for this particular episode and for the next few minutes, I would like to share with you some information about what's important, what is worker compensations, how important it is it to your business, how can you contain cost for that particular line item. And unfortunately, in healthcare and other businesses, that risk is high, therefore the cost is similarly very high. And unless active involvement of management to reduce cost by the virtue of risk management, you're in for a very bad surprise. A little bit of information about myself. I've been in business, like I said, for over 30 years. I personally dealt, as well as my staff in Quest, with different scenarios, different claims, and different aspects of business. Our biggest strength is the fact that we learned about our client. We try to inform them and be proactive in reducing the propensity for claim, and then also making sure when the claim happened, we're there for them when they need it the most. The objectives I would like to part with in the particular presentation is to obviously deal with the definition. What is workers' compensation? What's OSHA role? How can you merge the two? And instead of perceiving OSHA as being a regulatory mechanism and lots of fines and whatnot, but extracting for them few things that can help you mitigate the risk, improve your business outlook, and make sure your cost is contained. So starting with the first chapter, or the first issue is the definition of workers' compensation. So I'm not going to bore you with lots of detail. The bottom line is, for instance, in the Washington, D.C. metro tri-state area, it's mandatory to have workers' compensation. If you have one employee or more in Maryland, DC, you're obligated to have this coverage for your employee. If you're in Virginia, 2 employees or more will obligate you to have this coverage. The coverage is basically providing any work-related injuries. This particular coverage would provide medical assistance to the recovery and rehab of the employee, will also cover lost wages and a possible litigation in the event that the employee retains counsel. It is critical to understand that even the business owner can be exposed to injuries. So even though the state of Virginia and Maryland will allow the business owner to waive coverage by eliminating their payroll, which tend to be the highest portion of the payroll for small business, it is not recommended to do so, because you can be injured unless you procured yourself a private or disability coverage. Would be very, very problematic for the business to continue without you. In DC, you cannot waive coverage for the business owner. You have to include their payroll, and you have to make sure they're properly covered. So some statistics to just tell you how important it is, this particular risk transfer, which is workers' compensation. Annually, almost the state of Maryland's population gets injured. 2.8 to 3 million people gets injured every year. In 2019, it was 2.8 million individuals. These injuries range from a broken bone to laceration, whatnot. But it's very interesting to mention the fact that 31% of those work-related injury could be preventable, and majority of them are actually slip and falls. If you have 100 employees, in any 1 year, you should expect at least 3 claims or more. Obviously, that's the average. And so even though well-run businesses will do everything they can to mitigate and make sure the workplace is very safe, it's very important to remember that things happen, and you will be bound to have some claims if you're long enough in business. So couple other nuggets as far as statistic goes from the uh, from an injury perspective, and we gleaned these from the labor board. So over 888,000 injuries dealing with sprains, strains, and tears, which are small claims, you can call them, but on the average, they put people out of work for anywhere between a week to a month. Those claims are preventable. Those injuries are preventable. Similarly, if you look at the different lacerations and slip and fall, which we come to in a minute, all those are preventable by the mere fact of training staff to make sure that spill is cleaned very quickly, or the way you lift the box, or the way you handle a patient, and so on and so forth. It's very important to remember that the more you train, the more you empower staff, the more saving potentially is for you. This last point that we gleaned for the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, on the average, nationwide, it costs about almost $1,000 per employee per year for the work comp insurance to be covered, which amounts to almost 1.2% of the total wage of that employee. In healthcare, however, that number is much, much substantially higher. Lucky if you're in a $1,500 to $2,000 per employee per year, and the average becomes anywhere between 2 and 3. Now, that's assuming that you don't have too much claims and your loss ratio is with check, and you basically your experience modification factor is closer to 1 than 2. Unfortunately, in healthcare, because of the both severity and frequency of claims, those mod factor tend to be much, much higher, and therefore driving the price even higher. So this is where this is a very good low-hanging fruit for you as an employer to pay attention to, contain costs, and subsequently make sure the employee, you have a happier employee, safer workplace, and also contain costs. Remember, I mentioned to you about some of the avoidable claims that you as an employer can really work on. And this is it. 3 million employees get injured from slip and fall. And when they do, typically they're out of work anywhere between a week to a month, which in another episode we will record later on. It is critical for the employer to set a return to work program to allow that employee who's been injured with strain, sprain, or other things to have light duty so that they're still working for you, back to their employment, back with their peers, and limit the extent of the reserves and close that claim as quickly as possible. These are a few things we learned over the years that are critical in our minds. So instead of thinking of OSHA as being sort of a police organization, rather they have a tremendous amount of asset and codified in their mission statements to help you as a business owner to avoid claims and to learn how to run you don't have the resources to have a risk manager, to have somebody design manual for you to train. They have all that. You can use that turnkey to your advantage, and you can even call them to assist you in making sure you have the lay of the land and the beaten path to have a safer work environment. Free of charge, as I will share you in a second, they have a division that's all they do. They actually come to your premises. That's not enforcement. They provide you with suggestion, recommendation, and help them implement them and empower you and guide you how you can implement them. To the extent that you have a healthcare dealing with patients, that hand-to-hand combat with the patient and helping them, lifting them, bathing them, transferring them, providing medication, those are very, very, they have high propensity for claims. So to the extent that you actually train staff to know how to lift, to avoid a situation where they may have an injury, that would be extremely important. And that happened by continuous engagement, continuous training, and making sure that they have someone that they can lean on to ask questions or have their issues resolved. The last one that I would like to mention, it's very, very important. uh, if you're dealing with mental health facilities, with community, and dealing with patients who have mental disability, it is very critical to at least twice a year train staff on how to de-escalate conflict to make sure to avoid violence. Unfortunately, we see many a time where the patient whose medication was not properly administered, or somehow they've been scared, or uh, 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 been put out of sort, if you wish, and then a conflict ensue, and then the employee is put in harm's way by violently being treated by the patient. So it is very critical to do those de-escalation training, and making sure at times we have more, the ratio of employee to patient needs to be adequate to make sure to deal with issues. This is a nice slide that we thought we put together to examine the flow in the event of a worker compensation injury and therefore a claim. We feel like this could be extremely helpful for your HR department, whoever is taking care of the claim or being the contact person for the work comp. The first thing that we mentioned, and if you don't get anything out of this presentation, please do this couple of nuggets. I would be sharing with you in a second. As a matter of fact, let me show it now. We have a couple of incident reports that need to be filed, one by the employee upon the incident happening and the injury happening, and one by the manager or the supervisor of the particular employee. The reason why we ask two is because we want their perspective to be from different angles. We want to ask the employee what happened, when it happens, and what led to that injury, with all the data and provided and asked for in this report. But also we would like the supervisor to have a little more holistic view about what are the circumstances that led to this, so we have a lesson learned. Other things that the supervisor may know about that employee or the environment where they're in, so that to lead us to have a complete picture of the who, when, where and when. Back to the report and the flow chart. Once that incident report is provided, those clues are extremely critical for the adjuster of the company to adjudicate the claim and properly learn the decision whether it's to approve the claim or deny the claim. Again, this is for your own protection, for the business protection. We see many times that employees work multiple employers or have some other issues prior to even being in a workplace, and that could be impactful. So to the extent that your report elevate that and make that a priority for that for the adjuster, it would be very helpful for both you and the employee. We also think and feel, and we're convinced over time, that if the employee has a minor injury, sprain, pain, foot, and slips and falls, it would be very critical while the rehab is happening, while the employee is still compensated, while the employee is recovering, to create a light duty mission or desk for that employee to allow them to return to work while they're still going through rehab, even if it's few hours a day. That is extremely helpful from a morale perspective, and also to help the insurer actually close that claim. We see a tremendous impact, more than 70% success when the return program is installed, because that employee is back in their family with their coworkers, with their peers, and then seeing, they're active, if you wish, in ideal hands instead of sitting at home and possibly retaining counsel and having that claim being complicated. Once the claim is fully administered and the recovery happening and bring back to work, we want to make sure close that claim. And closing the claim is extremely helpful to you because your mod then will reflect that. Typically, claim stays on the book for about 3 years. And to the extent you can close them, and that's going to be very helpful on a renewal for your policy. Now, we file the claim, the injury is reported, and then what? It doesn't stop there. Unfortunately, the staff have to also do a first report of injury to the state and the jurisdiction where they're located in. Each one of them is listed here in the metro area. We are obviously active in more than 30 states. We can help you with that, but at least locally, it's critical for you to click on this link and file that notice or first report of injury. Otherwise, there would be some penalties involved with that. Some carriers do file this on your behalf, but not all of them. Ultimately, it's the employer's role to do so. Now we move into the OSHA. So the OSHA stands for Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1970. The OSHA administration is very active nowadays, particularly during COVID and post-COVID. There were lots of litigation dealing with some of the mandate they put out, but the bottom line is OSHA's mission is not only to administer and make sure the workplace is safe, but also to guide you and help the employer doing so. So to that end, they have a whole division that does nothing but you have the enforcement division, obviously, to make sure the workplace is safe, and then they levy fines and whatnot. But they have also a best kept secret where um, a whole division that does nothing but guide and provide help and provide you manuals and really assist the small business, particularly small business, in making sure that they have a robust risk management, and also help them make sure that to prevent claims. These are some of the required things that needs to be done in the event of an injury. So again, you have a DC, Virginia, and Maryland phone, and you have a site that you can upload. In the event of an injury, you have to, particularly if it's hospitalization or fatality, you have to report the claim within a certain period of time. If not, that we find a very stiff fine that can be issued. This is a piece of information for you to share with you. And again, if you don't know, we would love to provide you the resources and guide you. We will post our phone numbers at the end of this conversation. There are reporting requirements also for any employer. There are thresholds in terms of number of employee and your requirements. This is the deadline for those reports tend to be on March 2nd, even though that's a firm date, and you have to post some of those requirements and whatnot. To the extent you forget to do so, they're lenient. So you can, we call Paul, fill out the report, file it, and then explain as to what happened and why that report was not filed on time. We worked with OSHA in the past, and they've been very, very helpful, even though we had a couple of employer groups that had some fatalities, and they did not report it like they should have. And OSHA was lenient both in not levying fine and allowing that employer to go on and file that. So again, make sure you remember these things. The insurance carrier is not going to do any for you. It's up to you, the employer, to make sure that these are recorded and reported back to the respective organization, whether the state you're in or DC if you're in the district, and the OSHA correspondent OSHA office with that. Now, in addition to that, and I mentioned to you that you have the enforcement division, the recording division. The very important mission also of OSHA is to provide you with some advisors. So if you're in doubt, you don't know if this event, this hospitalization or urgent care visit is a reportable or recordable event, you then can lean on an advisor, which they have a very nice team that can actually get on the phone and give you guidance and show you the form that need to be properly filled out. This service is not known, and I think this is one of the best kept secrets also of OSHA. We use it for our clients, and I can attest to the fact that it's a wonderful, wonderful system. Again, once the form is filed, whether 300A or the other forms, then there are some posting requirements, and this is also if the form is not posted in the different locations, the employer can have stiff fines. And we highly recommend, if you're in doubt, make sure you call OSHA or call somebody you know who's well versed in this particular thing. This is a nice little flow chart we thought for whether you're required to record or not. And so it's very simple. It tends to have sometimes some of these injuries, they don't fit in any one box. So, and it says hospitalization, but it's an urgent care. Is that hospitalization? Maybe not. But also the employer sometimes does not have full knowledge of what exactly transpired. The employee can claim injury in the workplace, go to an urgent care, and then maybe a day or two later, hospitalized. Is that the same event? Would that be recordable? So all these issues, we endeavor to put a little bit of enough material in here for you to have a little bit of a knowledge, but ultimately, if there is doubt, again, OSHA has a wonderful team of experts that can actually, show you the way and guide you to the safe harbor. Some of these events you're not required to record. We took some example out of them. Now remember, in healthcare, you have a lot more than meets the eye. So You have needles, you have medications, you have DME, durable medical equipment, and so on and so forth. So you have to tread lightly. And even though in here it shows that, you know, you may not be required to file, at times it would be much more prudent to seek some advice of an expert within OSHA and take record and have their names and the date that been given you that particular advice. Mental health particularly is a very sensitive area. You know, if the person has some issues that's not related to the work, they came in with that issue, sometimes OSHA will absolve you from the recording. So this is what I mentioned to you on the top of the hour, and mentioned to you that the fact that OSHA has a phenomenal consultation department that provides you with lots of help. They can even come to the premises, to your workplace, and give you a report and walk with you. Lots of organization, insurance carrier have that loss control department where they can send an expert and walk with you and not charge. Use that. This is an augmentation to that. This is even if the insurance carrier is like a 101, this is a 500 series of graduate courses. They come in, they do a very thorough scrub. They give you all the guidelines. They show you where to get equipment if you need it, mats, special devices, and so on and so forth. And they give you a list and they assign someone to work with you confidentially with no repercussions. And no repercussion. Let me dial that back. Once they give you the report, they expect you to act on it, and they would like to see and give you a time frame to negotiate with you to make sure to implement those. To the extent there are costs associated with that, or you cannot find the product or whatnot, you want to make sure you involve that particular consultant that's been assigned to you to explain. You cannot just take the report, put it on your desk, let it gather dust, and do nothing on it. They get a little bit frustrated with that, so they want to make sure whatever they provide you as consultation, and that is kinetics with it, where you're working and trying to fix those. This is what they will do, and they will not do. Again, they're not an enforcement. They will not do anything. They will not fine you. They're just making sure that you know what you need to do, and they show you how to do it, and they expect you to do it and follow up on it in a time-frame fashion. This is a few nuggets that we gleaned. I hope to see you again in the next episodes to explain to you in detail about some of these return to work, some of the mod, some of the prevention tools, some of the OSHA guidelines. In the meantime, you have my email and you have my assistant email. Feel free to call us, contact us, or even book a small consultation with us. Would love to hear from you, and to the extent that we can guide you, we'll be extremely happy with that. With that said, thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode.